go. So if you would just be patient, give us a couple seconds, and we're going to go ahead and get started. All righty. All right, do we have everybody in? If you can hear us, go ahead and just chat hello in the chat box. That would be good. Bob Clark. If that's a Bob Clark I know, that'd be fantastic if you're here, Bob. How about that? We got Heather, or Hannah, Helen, people saying hello. I know, here's the other thing too. So if you have any technical difficulties, if you can't see something or hear something, please go ahead and refresh your browser. You can also send a chat to the moderator directly, and she'll be able to handle any of your technical difficulties to make sure you get to hear this and see this today. All right, hello. All right, everybody's in. All right, I do believe we are recording, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Toby Shifsky with Kaplan, and today's real expert presentation I'm kind of excited about. It's solar farms, bumper crop of opportunity. So as our nation goes through this transformation of energy usage and energy production, and as cars become electrified, and we continue to have more and more electronics that we feel like we are completely disconnected from the world if we don't have it with us. Energy, still the most probably important component of our daily lives today. And today I have two experts in the field of solar energy. And really, we're going to talk about solar farms, the new bumper crop. And so I'd like to introduce to you, first off, I've got Gordy Simonton. Gordy comes to us. He's a VP of Marketing and Project Development for SolarStone. SolarStone is a solar photovoltaic developer that will develop the land to be used for solar farms. We're talking, small community solar farms, large community farms, and Gordy is specialized in power, marketing, and permitting for these kinds of developments. And one of the things we're going to find out real soon is permitting is absolutely key to solar farms. Understanding the regulations, the zoning, the ordinances that actually pertain to a particular piece of land is absolutely critical. And Gordy has managed community solar subscription contracting for over 50 megawatt AC across over 15 different projects. If you're not familiar with it, I think a lot of you are, you've probably seen subscription services for subscribing to solar produced energy. And we're going to cover a lot of that actually today. And then we also have Kaya Tarhan. Kaya is the Chief Development Officer and co-founder of SolarStone. Kaya has 27 years of experience developing energy projects in the US and internationally. He developed over 2,500 megawatts of wind and solar projects globally during his career at RES and at SolarStone. So I want to say thank you both for being here today, our two experts on solar farms and the bumper crop of opportunity. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Toby.
Absolutely. Now, I think you guys are just becoming familiar with this format. This format is a very quick and active format. We only have 30 minutes. And so we have a lot of people. I think we've got, are we over 100 people already? I believe we are in the session, and they're all excited. They're all professionals in the real estate industry generally, or might even be landowners themselves. And they're looking at the opportunity of what is happening with solar farms, solar energy creation, and how does that play into the real estate world? And how does it play into maybe some of the clients that these people have? So first and foremost, I just wanted to ask, what are the different classifications of solar power generation? What I mean by that is I think we've all driven down a neighborhood and seen, a rooftop solar, panel on somebody's house, or even on the top of somebody's little, van, even some of these little solar panels. And then we've also seen these giant farms way out in the desert, maybe you've even been flying in a plane and you look down and see these huge solar farms. Well, what are we looking at? What are the different classifications for solar farms? Maybe I could ask Kaya, what is the different classifications? Kaya, I can't hear your volume. Are you muted? I think your microphone is out. Gordy, maybe you can take a whack at it while Kaya gets his microphone rolling.
Is he still off? Yeah.
I think we can hear you. Yeah. Kaya, you can always just refresh, come back. But
yeah, I'll pick it up while he's doing that. But yeah, I mean, typically you kind of from a 30,000 feet anyway, there's rooftop, which is typically residential, and then you would probably see another classification could be ground mounted, where someone's got a smaller few panels that they've got maybe in their backyard, or they've got some more land. And then the next step up from that is community solar, and that's what our wheelhouse has been here in Minnesota for the last 5 years. And that's usually somewhere between 10 to 50 acres that would take up. That's about 20,000 solar panels on the top end of that. And that typically requires some state legislation in order to enact that with community solar. And then the last one would be what you defined at the end there is a solar farm. And that can be anywhere from 50 to 1,000 acres. There's one up in Chisago County that is a 100-acre facility that's got about 1,000 megawatts on it. So, they kind of just go in that level there. But our main focus is in the community solar and the solar farms, and obviously looking for available land.
Right on. So this is key for everybody on here today. We're going to be concentrating on the community level and solar farms. If you want to put panels on your house, that's awesome. Go do that. But that's not what we're talking about today. So Gordy and Kaya are experts on the land, the usage, how it qualifies, what might the role be for an agent in this, because here's what we want is today at the end of this half-hour session, I want to give the agents another quiver in your another arrow in your quiver, where when you're talking to landowners, and they can be significant landowners and they can be ginormous landowners, understanding what piece of land might actually be a good solar farm, what might be a good community solar project, and what are the requirements to get there. You're gonna have some expertise that maybe some of your competition doesn't have, and it's going to allow you to have a different conversation with a landowner. And here's one of the things you got to understand: some of the rates that they're seeing, Kaya and Gordy, across the country, is you may be able to realize 3 to 4 times the value that you would for, let's say, just leasing a land for crops, as opposed to leasing it for solar. That's a big difference, and that's a big conversation that an agent can have. So we're going to get to that. We're going to help you identify what's a good opportunity and what's a bad opportunity. We're going to do it very quickly, and you're going to have questions. So I'm going to take this screen down in a second. If I would write down Gordy's number and name and Kaya's number and name and their email, and if you have questions afterwards, go ahead and ask them. I'll put this up at the very end again, but if you have a time right now, go ahead and grab this right now, and then let's go ahead and jump in. So let's go ahead. Kaya, can I hear you now? Maybe give me another.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, great. So Kaya, what's the growth rate of solar in the last 10 years? I mean, solar's been around for a long time, but the efficiencies of it have increased, and the usage of it has started to increase as I think, people start to get on board, and as manufacturing becomes more efficient. What does it really look like, though? What are we seeing for growth?
Sure, I think probably now is a good time to put that one slide up. But renewable energy, really started to take off about 10 years ago, primarily with wind, and then more recently, like in the state of Minnesota. Yep, there you go.
There we go.
In the state of Minnesota. In 2012, the state legislation, and we'll talk a lot about policy here too, because that's what drives renewable energy demand and then use. But in the state of Minnesota in 2012, they updated the requirement to include solar. And for those of you that are in Minnesota, you've seen a lot of community solar development projects going up across the state. And then along with that, utilities, are driving a lot of their demand by making proclamations to go 100% renewables
Right
by
on.
2050, and then more specifically earlier by 2035. So that's a giant lift to get to 100% renewables in that time frame. So there'll be solar projects going up in and around your community. If you haven't seen any yet, it's just a matter of time before policy comes to
and this is nationally. I mean, these numbers here are nationally. I know we're talking. I'm from Minnesota, so I love it when we talk about Minnesota. But this is national. And what we do find out is Minnesota is a leader in some of this. But there are state by state by state some super active solar and some not. Like if we look at California, it's off the charts policy in place that help the solar production. But if I'm looking at this chart, I mean, this looks like a lot of charts we see today that are not so, favorable across the country when we're talking about pandemics. But this is like screaming brilliant as far as growth. If we look just since 2014, 15, 16, this is growth in the megawatt capacity of solar. And this is what you guys are contributing to. This is what you're doing. You're building, helping to build solar farms on landowners' land across the country. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. And so we take a look at, here's a typical looking solar farm that I think a lot of people might be familiar with. This is how many acres is this one on? Do you guys know?
That's about 30 acres.
About 30 acres. 30 acres, and the land here was actually owned by the city at one time. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
And it was really a nice size project. Well, let's talk about this. Why is this important for a real estate agent to understand kind of the growth of solar and the fact that policy kind of drives the value of solar within a given state, even within a given community? What is it that is important for a real estate professional to learn about and understand? Why is it important?
Yeah, I can take that one. Obviously real estate agents across the country know landowners that have large acreages that they might want to be going for the highest and best use. And a couple of the attributes of land are looking at three-phase lines that you can interconnect to for a community scale project, which is the image that was just up. If their land has a large transmission line close by or on the property, that's another attribute that is quite useful.
Yeah.
Toby, you might want to put up those three-phase lines.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, Kaya. Is because I think everybody kind of understands solar. They kind of understand the farm concept, right? One of the unique parts about this, guys, is there's a couple different ways that a solar farm, can actually go in. It can be leased on a piece of land, or the land can be sold outright, right? And here's the thing: nice thing about being an agent is you can probably make money on the lease, and you can make money on a sale, both ways. And so, understanding not all pieces of land are created equal, and really that's probably true. And then not all pieces of land have the actual services to them that we need, right? Which is where you got into talking about, transmission lines. You could create all the power you want out in the middle of the country, but if you got no way to get it to where the people are, there's no value, right? So I think you brought up phase 3 lines. All right, so if we're going to move into this section here, I'd say, how do agents qualify a piece of land? Is really what we're going to talk about now, right? So when you're an agent and you're out there, what are the 4 things you got to have, right? What are the 4 things? And so let's take a look. You said phase 3 transmission lines. Everybody's going to love this. I got a picture, and I think everybody's going to understand this picture. So let me do this. Take this picture here. I think everybody's seen this, right? Driving out in the country, and you've got these power lines that follow the country road, and they look just like this for miles and miles and miles. And so, what is this kind of a line? What's kind of the capacity of that? What are these used for, Kaya?
This would be a smaller project in 1 to 5 megawatts in size, or a community scale solar project. So if you had a line like this that was relatively close to a substation, that's what we would look for. And then, some of the other attributes on land, which I think Toby was alluding to, would be, obviously we need flat land that doesn't have wetlands or things like that on it that aren't buildable or aren't constructible.
Okay. So on this power line, so like this farm right here, in this picture, would this be, triggered step number 1, transmission line right alongside this piece of land? Would that be a positive?
That's right. Yes.
And then it's clearly not a wetland, and it's flat. Number
That's
2
right.
and number 3.
If it's close proximity to a substation, it can't be, more than several miles away. And I think we have an image of a substation, something like this.
Yeah.
That the 3-phase line would then come back into.
Okay.
Those would be
So 2 things there. If I'm out in the field and I'm an agent, number 1, are there transmission lines close? Those little rural power lines run along all those country roads, and I got to be somewhat close to one of these guys, right? We've all kind of driven by these, and I think we all get a little nervous, maybe sometimes like, there's something going on here, but really these are super important, right? Because this is where the power is directed, like where it's going to go, right? And it's can be transmitted over greater distances through bigger power lines from here, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So how many miles away from one of these guys must you be?
It depends on a lot of factors, but let's say if it's within 2 miles, let's talk about it. And
okay. So number 1, if you're within 2 miles of one of these, that's a big plus. What would be the max range? I mean, would you say 4 miles, or like, you're just out of it? You're not even close.
Above 2 miles, things degrade because a lot of times you have to have upgrades to the distribution network to bring power back to the substation. So I'd say that's a limit.
Got it. So 2 miles, if you're within 2 miles of one of these, that's a really good plus. And then, and they have the transmission lines. So 2 things. And are there bigger lines that we got to look at? Are bigger lines better? Is there anything else we can tie into?
Well, transmission lines are a lot larger than 3-phase. So yeah, that image shows a large transmission line, and that type of a line can actually hold a utility scale project, let's say 50 or 100 or 200 megawatts in size, and it's about 7 acres per megawatt. So if you had a 100 megawatt project, you'd need about 800 acres for setbacks, things like that to consider.
To put it in a neat package, that 3-phase line that we were looking at before, that's more inclined for community solar for a 10 to 50 acre facility. If you put the transmission line back up again, that would be more for what we would be looking at 50 plus acres for a solar farm and above.
Got it. So smaller the line, the smaller the development, right? Can only hold so much electricity, I suppose. And so the bigger the line, the bigger the opportunity, right? Yep. So when you see these giant lines going through, now, even with these giant lines going through, do you still need to be 2 miles from a substation?
There's a couple attributes there. You can either tap the line if it's a large enough project, or if you're relatively close, again, say a couple of miles, because you still have to build a transmission line to interconnect with it at the substation.
Got it. Is there any way to look, a great question, Wesley. What if we got a lot of these agents out there, they're like, hey, man, we use maps for everything. I can tell you every home listed, every, property available. How do you find transmission substations? Is that like on some protected thing, or is there, how do they know? Is there a map or anything for that? Any resource?
There are some, but you do have to have permissions to get a hold of it. But more often than not, it's infrastructure, and everything with 9/11 has made everything protected.
So it's really about your local knowledge. If you're moving around, driving around, understand, right? Ask a couple questions. you should be able to find that.
Yeah, and actually, in our experience, I would tell you the landowners oftentimes they know.
Got it.
They know.
Got it. Got it. All right. So number one, the land's got to be, unencumbered point of access to the property, meaning you got to be able to access it. So you can't build a farm in some landlocked thing that nobody can get to. You got to be able to get there with equipment. You got to be able to build it and service it, all that kind of stuff. Transmission lines, we talked about the phase 3, smaller, so up to 50-acre farms, and we call those community ones, right? Is that what you said, community? And then you've got the giant transmission lines, those big towers like these right here. You can do 1,000-acre farms, ginormous ones. But once again, substations very important. Not, as I would imagine, like you said, Kai, you could tie into these for a big enough project on one of these transmission lines. So maybe a little more flexibility on the big ones as long as everything lines up. But if you see power lines, generally you find that substation, and you probably got a piece of land that would qualify as long as it's flat, it's not wet. How big of a grade, would you be able to go to? Like how big, because it's mostly rolling country or it's dead flat. Is there any sort of a limit to how much it can be tipped, or is there south facing, in the northern climes, or is there anything like that?
The flatter the better, and then the maximum grade or elevation change can be like up to 8%.
6 to 8%?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good. All right. And then finally, what about local jurisdictions, rules, ordinances, things like that? How aware of those do I need to be as an agent to understand what can and can't happen somewhere?
Typically across the country, in states that don't have a solar policy that's driving it, most of the jurisdictions probably haven't looked at solar ordinance requirements yet. But as an example, in Minnesota in 2012, a lot of the local jurisdictions updated their ordinances. So usually they're quite accommodative in most cases. And if jurisdictions don't have them, there's lots of good examples that they can then model them after. And we'd be happy to help or work with folks that want to be pointed in the right direction for policy.
Got it. So because policy is kind of key, isn't it, for your industry?
That's right.
Tell us about how policy drives kind of the building and the growth, because it all really affects the value of the property that these farms are put on, right?
Right. You have to have a solar policy because the utilities are governed by the states. They're a monopoly effectively. So the states put into place what rules and regulations and requirements that utilities have to live by. And then that's what drives, in Minnesota, the community solar, the utilities, have requirements. Some of them are now self-imposed that they're going to 100% renewables. So it's either utility policy, state policy, or federal policy.
So if you gave me a map, to put up, Kaya, that kind of showed it, because I know you do these all over the country. And so everybody, take a look at this map for kind of growth nationally. Let me see if I can move this. So here we are, cumulative U.S. solar installations by state. California just jumps right off the map here, right? I mean, just ginormous. But even down through the whole Southwest, obviously good weather, clear weather, optimal for solar farming, even down in through Texas. And are we seeing that regulation? I mean, I know presidential elections can sometimes change policy. What do you feel for the next 5 years for policy changes on solar? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, with the current view that Biden will get in, he's going to re-enlist in the Paris Accord, and then that likely will drive other, federal policy for utilities and states to adhere to different mandates. But again, federal policy does one level of work. Utility scale policy, they've already been driving more towards 100% renewables by 2050, with the bulk of that probably happening before 2035 in order to meet the Paris Accord requirements.
Beautiful. So more, not less. General.
That's right. I think that other slide showed that pretty clearly.
Yeah, that huge drive and demand. All right, so we got a couple minutes left. I know we started just a couple minutes after the hour, so we're going to go about four more minutes, everybody. And so here's what we got. How does this work? If I'm an agent and I'm sitting with a seller or an owner of land, and I see that I've got a substation, I've got transmission lines, or I got these giant transmission lines, not just phase 3, and it's flat and it's dry and it's got access. And I go to the farmer and say, have you ever thought about solar? Because you may be able to get might be able to get more for your land leasing it or even selling it than you would leasing it out to another farmer, right? And so how is that a benefit to the landowner? I mean, because I think about I get that agents, I'm going to leave it up to you to be able to negotiate your commissions on either of those deals. And the higher the price, the higher the commission you generally get. So that's all good. But what are some of the arguments as to why an agent would offer this up to a landowner? What's their significant for either land management or what would they do? Why would they do that?
It's an alternative to what they might offer as a sale. They might be more interested in a higher lease rate to then maybe potentially keep the land in the family. And I think as we start to wrap up, we could talk about the transition for solar. There's a 35 to 45 year lease with that. At the end of its useful life, the panels are removed, the posts are taken out of the ground, and then the land can be repurposed to either go back to farming, or if residential development is migrated its way towards that particular part of the land, it could be transitioned to a higher and better use then again.
That's very interesting. So it could be a long-term legacy plan, right? It's almost like a conservation resource plan where the land goes out of farming, but it really goes into solar farming. The panels are put into place. You enter into a lease, and I understand that the typical lease is 35 years plus a 10-year option for the developer, right? The 10-year options so basically a 45-year lease.
That's right.
But at the end of that 45 years, you just said you pull the posts, you pull the panels, and the ground is clear. As a matter of fact, it might be as healthy as it's ever been, and it could be returned back to farming, or it could be as a long-term land holding strategy where you're making money on that land the whole time, and you will wait for development, residential, commercial, to reach your property, and then have an even higher and better use at that point, 45 years down the road for really a legacy for your family.
That's right. Yeah, one of the biggest benefits of solar is that for anybody who knows the farming world and the inputs that they have to have and the time spent in the tractor, working the land, this is a cash flow revenue generator that multiplies that. And if you want to continue farming, you can go buy or lease more land effectively.
Got it. So you don't have to stop doing what you're doing. It might actually allow you to do more of what you're doing. But it's a little diversity, right? So you're not all tied into crops. Yeah, really awesome stuff. This is, I think this is powerful. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that everybody listening, you got this new arrow in your quiver, and you be able to have a conversation. I'll tell you what, I know you got more questions. I'm going to go ahead at the end of this, and I'm going to put up Kaya and Gordon's information again. But reach out to them. They're the pros on it. I can't thank you guys enough for coming, and thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wrap it there. Once again, if you have any more questions, feel free to email in and also contact Gordy and Kaya at your convenience. Thank you.